Hello. A few weeks ago I did a distance test using a couple of those nRF24L01, the 2.4 gigahertz radio modules that we can use with our Arduinos to get two Arduinos to communicate with each other. And the purpose of the test was to compare the distance that this big ass Yagi antenna, this was on the transmitter, could send the signal compared to one of the normal whip antennas, the little dipole antennas. And this is the result of that test here. So the receiver was on my quadcopter and I flew it out as far as I can, really, in the distance of the hills near my place. And you can see that I got to about 2.3 kilometers. That's the furthest point that I could get to. And the drop off in packets per second, so that's what we're measuring. It's not really an RSSI, but it's effectively it's an RSSI. So the starting packets per second right at the same, like almost on top of the transmitter, was about 510 by the looks of it in this one. And it only diminished to a little bit under 500, even at 2.3 kilometers. And I remember saying at the end of that video that this kind of begs the question, if we could go further, how far could we go before we start to see some drop-off in this signal? So that's what I'm doing in this video. Keep in mind that this test that we're looking at right here, this is a completely clear line of sight. There are no obstructions at all between the transmitter and the receiver. No trees, no hills, nothing. Now I don't really want to fly any further than this with a quadcopter. So what I did was I decided to look around for the longest straight road I could find within a reasonable distance and try and put the transmitter somewhere high and just drive down the straight road with the receiver stuck on my car and see how far I could get. So the longest straight road, at least on the state highway network in New Zealand, is 13.7 kilometers. I was looking for somewhere that would be about 10 kilometers. That was what I figured would be enough, given that the signal's not going to go as far over straight flat ground as it is through the air. Some local roads on Canterbury Plains have even longer straights. Unfortunately, though, this and also this are nowhere near where I am. So I had a bit of a look around somewhere closer to home, and I had quite a bit of a look around, actually. I was prepared to drive a fair distance to get there. And it actually stands out. Well, now that I know where it is, I can see it already at this scale. But there's a road here that is one of these country roads that they mentioned, but as we zoom in, we'll see that, actually no, it's not that one, sorry, it's this one here. And this, if I measure the distance of that, we get a straight line of 11.3 kilometers. So that's not too bad, considering that the longest, at least longest one that we know of in New Zealand is, where is it, 13.7. So it's more than the 10 Ks I wanted, and it's close to being the longest that we know of, at least in the whole country. So that was pretty good, and it wasn't too far to drive to get there. So I thought, okay, I'll drive over there and do my test there. So this is the stuff that I set up to do the test. It's very, very similar to the way I was doing it before, except now that the receiver is going to be riding on the top of a car, it doesn't need to be so small. So I'm using a regular Arduino. I think the rest of it is all the same though. Same GPS, same radio module, same SD card writer thingy. There is one thing that's different, and that is on the end here I have one of those little buzzers that we put on our quadcopters. It's just a 5-volt continuous buzzer, and the reason for that is because I didn't want to have to look at something while I was driving. So if it was an audio cue or signal rather than something that I could look at, I thought that would be a bit safer. So I set it to switch the buzzer on and off, so toggle the buzzer every 25 packets or something. So at the full speed rate of about 500 packets per second, that would make the buzzer beep on and off 10 times. Sorry, no, it would make the buzzer beep on 10 times. What? On and off? Or whatever. Something like that. So it's going beep, 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 like that when there's good signal. And when signal starts to drop off, it starts to go beep, 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 and it just sort of, when there's no packets coming in at all, it will stay in either off or on state, one or the other. Doesn't really matter which, but it's the fact that it's not changing is enough to let us know that we're not getting any packets anymore. So the idea is I would just drive until this stopped beeping, basically. So that was the point of that. Other than that, I think everything was pretty much the same. Source code is almost all the same. Over here on the transmitter side, I think on this one the source code is exactly the same as my last test. I didn't change anything at all. And I think I'm even using maybe even the same Arduino, perhaps. I'm not sure. No, it's different because I wanted to use a USB, micro USB plug. So this is just a power bank thingy to give 5 volts. So this will turn on like that and transmit, and a little bit of sellotape to hang it up. And so if over here, if I turn this on, oh, actually the GPS is cold, so it's going to take a while to warm up, but so the first thing it does is that while it's warming up the GPS. So I'll just cut the video here and come back when the GPS is warmed up, and then it will start. It takes 15 readings of the GPS to determine where the start location is, so that it can measure the distance away from the start point. And then it will start making the beep 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 noise that I mentioned earlier on here. So let me just wait for it to warm up. I might have to take it outside and let it warm up, and then I'll come back. Okay, there we go. It's beeping now. You can probably hear that. Just make absolutely sure you can hear it. So I just have a piece of sellotape on here to make it a little bit more tolerable and control the volume. You can actually get quite a good range of volume control if you just twiddle with the sellotape a little bit. Anyway, so it's transmitter is on, and we're getting probably about 500 packets per second here, so it's doing the full speed beep 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 noise. And if I turn the transmitter off, we get nothing. Well, it depends what it was doing when I turned it off. We can also get it to be, there we go. So the point is that it's not changing. Anyway, so that's how it works. The reason for having the reason for mounting it on this piece of wood here and having the GPS sort of at this, on this side of it, up like that instead of down there, and also the reason for having such a long wire on my microphone thingy, speaker thingy, will become clear in the next little section where I explain how I set this up. Alright, so I'm just about to head out. I'm just going to do a little test here, so I'll show you how everything's connected as I do it. So the transmitter is connected at the base of the pole, and antenna is on there. I'll just turn that on. And then over here we have USB power coming from the car, that's coming from like the cigarette lighter socket there and a 5-volt converter, and I have these nice sort of rubbery window frames which let me just put it straight out there like that, and then that comes up here to power this, and this is going to be inside a little bit so that I can hear it beeping as I'm driving. And it should turn on when I turn the car on. Noisy, isn't it? You can see why I've got that sellotape on there. And then when this gets 15 readings, it should start beeping. Oops, and then it'll stop beeping when I turn this off. Great. And then because it's flushing that to the file continuously. I can just turn this off any time, and we should be good to go. I mean, we should have that file stored correctly without losing anything. Okay, let's go do it. So this is the spot. Number 7 road is the 10.3 kilometer long road. And another nice thing about this road is that there's not a lot of foliage on each side, and there's not any huge power lines around. There are the small power lines there. There's a bit of trees, quite dry looking trees at the moment. And I can see probably about 2 or 3 kilometers line of sight. I mean, I can't see very well, but when I took a drive down here a couple of months ago to check it out, and I think there's a clear line of sight to about 3 kilometers. I'm just sort of guessing mostly, but like the road didn't go up and down very much is what I mean. So you're not going to be going over the horizon for about 2 or 3 Ks. Yeah, so I'm just going to stick my pole on there, and yes, just in case you were wondering, the pronunciation of the name of the other road is Whakahoro. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get attaching stuff to where it has to go. So we've got the beepity beeps, as you can maybe hear. Not that beep, that's me reversing. Beep 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 beep. Sounds good. And I will set my trip meter here to 0. And we'll see when the beeps start to die out, and I'll catch up with you then. This is 2.9k, so this is the first time it's actually gone silent for that long. There was actually a little bump in the road. Oh, maybe not, I don't know, because every now and then we get good reception still. Like right now is good. So I think I'll just go until it just completely doesn't do any fast beeps at all. Okay, this is the 5 kilometer mark, and I didn't hear any decent beeping at all for pretty much the last kilometer. So I'm just going to get out and check that data is being written to the card, and then I'll go back. So that's how that was done, and here are the results, and we can see that we get pretty solid signal up until about 1.8 kilometers or so, maybe even 1.9 kilometers, with the exception of this bump going out. And then basically from then on we didn't really get much reliable signal. I wouldn't say at all, but not really consistently reliable. And it's interesting that there are sort of some almost equidistant bumps in the signal there. I'm not sure if maybe this is something to do with the Fresnel effect, or I don't know. There's another one here. It's also interesting that so outward means when I'm driving away from the transmitter, inward is when I'm coming back. This is a little bit opposite to what I expected, because the receiver is mounted more towards the rear of the car, So I would have thought that in that position, less of the body of the car is going to be in the region of where the signal is coming from. So I would have thought that going out would have been slightly better. But no, coming in or returning, so this is when the receiver has what I would consider to be more of the body of the car in front of the transmitter. Yeah, that actually turned out to be a better result. So that's the red line. So yeah, like I say, I stopped at 5k mark there, and I was getting almost nothing, but not quite nothing. You can see that every now and then there was a packet or few packets. Maybe that's what, about 40-ish packets per second at one point there. So if you were to mount this little whip dipole up on top of your house or on a little tower or something like that, I'm pretty sure you could still get a usable signal even at 5 kilometers. Yeah, if you mounted it in just the right place, it might still work.
Well, that's not too bad. But that, ladies and gentlemen, was only the first course, because I have another one of these, and what I really wanted to do today was come out here and check this at the other end on the receiver. So I've set up that steel plate on the roof to accept this, and now I'm going to attach that, and we'll use this antenna instead of the cheap little dipole antenna, and we'll see how far we can get with two big ass Yagis. So ideally I wanted to have this on the dashboard there so that the GPS would have a good view of the sky, but this cable is not quite long enough to do that, so I'm just going to have it sitting there. Should be good enough, I think. Right, this is the 5k mark, and hopefully you can hear this. Better than it was before. I mean, we're still getting packets at least, but it's not 100% obviously. So on we go, past 5. Actually, while I'm here, let me just see how much of an effect turning the car has. So this is just on 5. I'll have to remember that. Yeah, look at that. When I turn about 30 degrees off, we get nothing. When we're pointing down the road, we're good. And then 30 degrees off that way again, and nothing. So I'll have to remember that just after 5Ks we did this. So these results are going to be a little bit incorrect. So if I point the car about here, oh, that's pretty good. Except that's we're gonna drive into the fence. So we're probably about must be almost 6 kilometers here, and dropped out quite a bit there. All right. So anyway, well, I'll just drive until it stops. I mean, it really stops. Oh, is that it? Oh, that was it, I guess. Yeah. So I think we're about 6 kilometers there where it stopped. That was my guess. Okay, I'll go another kilometer or so just in case we do get some showing up again, and then I'll turn around and come back. For the return trip, I'm of course turning the antenna around so that it's facing the right way, and because of the way the railing sort of curves a little bit on this roof, the antenna is actually pointing upwards a little bit now. probably won't make much difference. It's only like maybe 1 or 2 degrees at the most upwards. Anyway, let's see how it goes, eh?
Here's a graph of the results using the Yagi on the receiver. So with the whip antenna we saw at about 1.9K, we saw a first major drop into excuse me, into almost nothing. Oh no, was it nothing? It's not into nothing, but it goes down into sort of 200 to 100 there, doesn't it? But we managed to get through there. I guess this is the equivalent of that. We lost a bit there, but nowhere near as much. And then if we look about here, we saw again these equidistant humps or bumps or areas of good frequency. But this time they lasted up until almost 5 kilometers. So the last time we saw consistent 500 packets per second, or it's a little bit more, isn't it? 530, sorry, packets per second in both directions was about the 4.6 kilometer mark by the looks of it. And after that, it started to get a little bit less reliable. Once again, we see that the inward signal is better. And like I say, this is not really what I expected. So I thought that the body of the car being in front of the antenna would, it's not really obstructing, but it's sort of in the same field of view, if you know what I mean. So if anybody can tell me why having more of the car in the field of view is beneficial, that would be interesting. I would be interested to know. So again, when we look at the last point where we got a full signal, I would say that if you were to mount this on a tower, you would easily get 500, or you'd get, like, look at the height here and the height here. It's practically the same. So if you put this on a tower at that 6 kilometer mark or so, you would easily still get pretty much full strength signal coming through. So that kind of begs the question then, how far could these two antennas, both Yagis, go if they had a genuine clear line of sight, so they weren't going across the ground like this with potentially some little humps in the road to obscure them? So I'd like to answer that question too, but this one gets a little bit tricky because I did find one location that might be able to help with this, and this is a picture of it here. This is Mount Tiaraha, which is also within a reasonable driving distance. As you can see, I drove over there to check it out after I did this test, but I was blocked as I drove up the road by a sign that said, or actually there's a fence across the road and it said like no entry. So I guess it's not publicly accessible just by anybody to walk in and go up there. So if I can figure out who to call up and ask for permission to maybe go up there, I'm thinking maybe about trying mounting the transmitter up there and then driving in whatever direction I point the transmitter, of course, and seeing how far I can get when we have a genuine clear line of sight. Not sure if I'm going to be able to do that, so don't hold your breath, but I would like to try that someday if I can figure out a way to do it. But, oh, hang on a minute. One more graph I thought we might look at here. This is a comparison of the whip and the Yagi, and this is comparing the outgoing, which is the weaker of the two in each case, I think. Is it that one? Outward is that one. Yeah, that's right. So this is the outgoing signal in both cases. So you can see basically blue being the whip antenna drops off. It's about a little over half as good as the Yagi to that point, at least as far as we tested it. Okay, that's the last thing I was going to show you, I think. So, thanks for watching. See ya.